Hello again, everyone. It's MrMostDaysOff.
And I'm the WizKid.
And we're here to talk about PopThreads.com, our newest sponsor and your online destination for all pop culture t-shirts. And right now, for our listeners, they are offering 10% off just by using the discount code Simpsons at checkout.
Woohoo!
They have some awesome Simpsons shirts. They've also got other things like old school Nickelodeon, my favorite, Legends of the Hidden Temple, and they've got us wrestling fans covered.
They also have up to the current season t-shirts from TV shows like Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead. So make sure you head over to popthreads.com right now.
Use that discount code Simpsons
so you can save a lot of dope!
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes who grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and I'm back this week and once again joined by your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How are you today, Rich?
It's good to be back today. This is going to be a very exciting day, I think. We might have a Hans Gruber-esque person joining us today, maybe. We'll see how good or bad he is. But I'll let you introduce our new co-host for today. For now, I'll throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the mirthless laugh of the damned. It is Miles.
We do have an awesome guest joining us today. First of all, let me say, the episodes we're covering today are Burns, Verkaufen Der Kraftwerk, as well as I Married Marge. But that first one that I totally am sure I just butchered is important to our guest because our guest is none other than the aforementioned German Karl. Welcome to the show, German Karl.
How's it going, everybody?
How are you, man?
I'm well. I'm glad to be on. It's interesting to me to talk a little bit about The Simpsons. I did when I was growing, I didn't have the closest relation to The Simpsons, but I did know about it. And like Bart skateboarded, I thought that was awesome. That's something I wanted to do. And The Simpsons is sort of iconic in the sense that it's so ubiquitous. It's everywhere. I mean, The Simpsons did it. That's the punchline.
That's a running theme on our show.
Exactly. And so for me, I do poetry, as you know, as you've mentioned. And if you make your way to a Barnes & Noble and you make your way to the poetry section, you can find an orange book. It's Best New Poets 2016. And if you turn to page 44, you'll find one of my poems.
That's dope, man. If you're in a Barnes & Noble listening to this right now, I don't care if you are interested in poetry or not. Just go find that because, how coincidental is that to have that happening right now?
And so in addition to that, I also do translations, and I've been translating an East German poet. So for me, there's a subtlety to it because in many ways, you think East Germany, you think stereotypes in many ways, and this guy's just not a stereotype. He was a critic of the East German government. He was a critic of several other things. So I guess it's just there's subtlety, and there's subtlety in this Simpsons episode that I think is just fantastic and fascinating.
I do want to talk about this Simpsons episode, but I have to ask first, Karl. When I grew up, or let me say this, when a lot of kids are growing up, they want to be like a police officer or a fireman or, like an astronaut. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. At what point did you realize you wanted to translate German poetry?
I think I was probably 6 or 7.
Where did that drive come from?
2 places. The most prominent place was that my grandfather and I would speak German to one another. But then also my father, after my grandfather passed away, my father started speaking German with me. We would listen to these tapes to try to learn German. It was it just sort of became second nature almost.
Interesting. Man, again, you have a very unique perspective, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get into this episode. Like I said, this episode is called Burns, Verkaufen Der Kraftwerk. Karl, now you say it.
Burns, Verkaufen Der Kraftwerk.
It debuted on December 5th, 1991. The chalkboard gag for this episode was the Christmas pageant did not stink, which it probably did, let's be honest.
Well, come on, if he's writing it on the chalkboard, he's being told to correct something that he mistakenly did earlier, so of course that means it was terrible.
Well, but it's also Christmas.
He probably got it from Skinner. Let's be real. The couch gag on this one had Santa's little helper on the couch growling as the Simpsons approached, and it was king of the castle as the rest of the family just backed off. We start with Mr. Smithers washing Burns' hair, or rubbing his scalp, I guess would be more of a accurate portrayal. He was recanting of his missed opportunities in life and how the nuclear plant is just a time restraint and keeping him from doing things. It's actually bringing a tear to his eyes, which I love the joke they do here, because Smithers is like, "But sir, I specifically bought no more tears."
This is one beyond the power of a mere shampoo.
Yeah. Smithers also brings out Snappy the alligator, which is in fact a hand puppet, which allows Burns to open up a little bit more. There's also a part where Burns is reflecting and he talks about how really when he was a child, he just was like most, where he wanted to play ball and be able to wipe away his enemies with the push of a button.
Which I'm pretty sure he could do.
At this point, he definitely could do. I mean, he does have that whole plant at his disposal. He also starts to really show his feelings, and I love a line that comes soon where Smithers says something along the lines of, and they say just because he's rich, powerful, and cruel that he doesn't have feelings.
That's a great summation of the character of Burns. But it all goes back to power. He only has feelings or he's upset when he's losing some kind of power, he thinks.
Well, Smithers also casually lets it slip to Homer that he knows that Mr. Burns wouldn't sell that plant for less than $100 million.
Smithers runs into Homer like outside of Burns' little area because Homer's trying to get candy from the candy machine. And I really love the misunderstanding between the two of them in that little moment, because Homer starts crying because his dollar bill's all crinkled up and the machine won't take it. And Smithers thinks Homer is crying because he overheard Burns being upset and wanting to sell the plant. And so they have a little moment where they misunderstand each other, but they're on each other's team accidentally.
Yeah, I love when Homer's like, "Oh, can I get change for this wrinkled dollar?" And Smithers is like, "Oh, yes, do try to eat."
And the poor guy just wants a candy bar.
He is obsessed with candy. We'll get to that part here short and not too long.
That was a correct depiction of the land of Germany, for the record.
Homer was also surprised to learn that he actually had stock in the power plant. And for the first time since he got it, actually went up a whole quarter per share, which would have left him with $25 whole. I like there's a line where you find out that all the employees actually picked up this stock in exchange for some of their constitutional rights.
By waiving some certain constitutional rights.
I think there's a little bit of humor there in the sense that, Miles and I had talked about this, Richie, but Godwin's Law, where Godwin's Law is basically the longer a conversation goes on online, the higher the probability that someone will bring up Hitler. So with a title like this one, we're sort of just waiting around to see how the German part of this plays out. And I think that even there you get sort of an overtone of well, if you're going to give up this, you're going to give up constitutional rights, but you're going to get this.
Way to jump the gun and just go straight for the Hitler button right now.
I know, right?
Godwin's Law proved itself fool on this episode.
But is the fact that he knows the law in advance perpetuating the idea that he's eventually going to say it?
And did he just incept it into this conversation entirely?
Exactly.
Yes, this is very true.
I mean, not all Germans are Nazis, Carl.
Hey, not all Carls are German.
Carl!
Carl!
I really enjoy the exchange between the stockbroker and Homer, because when he first starts the conversation, Homer just wants to get right to the point and is like, "How much did I make?" And the broker's like, wait, the book says that I'm supposed to have small talk with you first. Everybody alive? Yeah. Like sports? I guess. Ever go dancing? Not anymore. We should get together sometime. I would like that. Oh, all right. Now we trust each other. Like I said, he ends up finding out that his stock is worth a whole 25 extra, or went up in value by $25 that he would get to take, minus, I'm assuming, his broker's expenses and whatnot. But he agrees. He's like, sell, sell, sell.
If you heard your boss saying that he was about to sell the plant, if you knew anything about stocks, and I don't know anything about stocks, but I would think that if you know your owner is about to sell, wouldn't you hold on to the stock for a little while longer?
It seems like the right move to me.
The guy is kind of shady. The guy that calls Homer to tell him about the stocks, he's smoking a cigarette in a dirty room and sweating. And like it just seems kind of shady. And I was sort of interested. So Miles is right. It's $25, and it was 25 cents a share, which means that Homer had 100 shares.
He does poetry and math, ladies and gentlemen.
But then later on, to jump forward, it turns into 5,200.
$52 a share is what it turns into.
There you go.
He has 100 shares.
The worst thing about that, in my opinion, is that Patty and Selma are actually the ones that call Marge to let them know that the stock had gone way up, expecting Homer to, basically unwittingly fallen into this big lump of money. But the fact that he had already fucked it up by the time they had called just makes that so much worse, because you know how hard those two are on him already. Sometimes to a very unfair degree, even though in this case it is somewhat warranted.
And he sort of, to backtrack, sets himself up by buying beer. He spent all of the $25 on a special beer.
Well, what really makes it bad is that their family is all sitting around the TV watching the business channel, and the stock just keeping going up. And basically, Marge starts talking about things like the fact that the Simpsons have never had a savings account, and now they might finally be able to. And that's when Homer comes in and says, "Oh, you've heard? It's great news." When Marge says they have some plans, Homer's like, "Well, sorry, I already had some plans. I spent it all on beer." So at that point, she thinks it's $5,200 worth, which is, not... The sad part is that's not completely out of the question for Homer.
Well, I do think we need to backtrack a little bit, because Homer has an interesting conversation with a couple gentlemen while he's at Moe's drinking his $25 beer.
That special beer was Henry K. Duff's Private Reserve, and Moe was very cautious to open it, because once that pop tops, there are no returns. Homer actually offers to buy a beer, I believe, for the guys next to him, the two gentlemen you were referring to, who are strangers, and they basically, in the most polite way possible, say the most insulting thing possible, and that is that your American beer is swill. And then they're like, "Did we say that right? We meant to imply that it's stuff only pigs would drink out of, the slop."
Yeah, I think he says, "Oh, thank you. My English is not perfect, but I have to tell you, your beer is like swill to us. Do I have that right? I am saying that only a swine would drink this beer." And that's Duff. I mean, come on now. That's got a special place in everyone's heart.
Fair enough. But I will say this. That is a German joke in some ways.
Well, Germans think they always have the best beer, right?
Well, okay, let me say this. If you walk into a bar in Germany and ask for flüssiges Brot, what you're asking for is liquid bread. So the implication is that German beer is it's like bread. It's something you eat every day. Americans are now quite taken with craft beers, but the whole idea in Germany is that every good bar brews its own beer.
That makes sense.
So every beer is craft beer, essentially.
Right. So it's like this whole mass-produced thing is just ridiculous. And before Prohibition in the United States, most American beers were quite similar to German beers. It was only after Prohibition that you had American beers. My father calls it piss water. But you only have these American beers that are super light and super watered down. That's the result of Prohibition.
Well, let me ask you this, Carl. I don't know if you'll know this or not. It's a few years ago. I had a buddy of mine that went over to Ireland, and when he was over there, he said he went into about 3 different bars, and to have a Guinness and drink some stuff that's native to them. And he said he was overwhelmed by how many people were being overcharged there to drink things like Coors Light because they wanted some kind of import. And that just boggled my mind, because Coors Light's probably one of the most disgusting beers I've ever tasted in my life.
There goes that Coors sponsorship we were hoping for.
Coors Original is good. Coors Light, bleh.
Yeah, way to hedge the bet. Thanks.
But the fact that everyone wanted an import or a foreign beer, and they were drinking something that over here people drink because it's super cheap and they can't afford anything else. Does that ever play into places like Germany that you know of?
I can't speak with any sort of authenticity about that. But I will say this, that there's an infatuation with America, I think, in many countries, not only Germany, Japan, there's other places. And I think part of it is we Americans forget how ubiquitous American culture is. I mean, you can probably go to most Germans and ask them if they've seen an episode of The Simpsons, and they'll have seen some. Whereas the exchange the other way around isn't so high,
Right.
where it's like, what is really authentically Irish or German or Japanese? We don't know. So many Americans
Don't make
know.
it sound pretty. It's because every American is Homer Simpson. We're all selfish and don't give a crap about anybody else.
That's right.
It's fairly accurate, sadly. I also wanted to ask about the joke with one being from East Germany and one being from West Germany. Now, I'm fairly ignorant when it comes to geography and especially other countries' cultures and things of that nature. I get that, East and West Germany, one was free, one was communist, from what I understand. But was there anything else to that joke that I think some of us might have been missing, or was it just that shallow of a joke?
When was it that the episode aired again?
December 1991.
That was basically 2 years after reunification. And there is just a little more of it that it's sort of, the joke's a little bit old.
Yeah.
But the joke specifically is that reunification is going well, that everybody's happy, that everybody's friends. When in fact, the reunification had problems with it. And if you look into it, there's a film, Goodbye Lenin, and it speaks to some of the difficulties with reunification where, for instance, if you were East German, you had to exchange your money. And if you didn't get it back in, your money was worthless, essentially. Long story short, reunification was difficult. It wasn't simple.
It wasn't like the two guys, as they did in this episode, they both are like, we both had a large business, I in East Germany, him in West Germany. Now we have a very large business together. It wouldn't just be all like sunshine and rainbows like that.
Exactly. So there's another layer to that joke in that things aren't that
They were
pretty.
playing it out to where it was like a smooth transition and it was a land of chocolate when really that's not what happened.
Right.
Well, either way, they happen to be talking with Homer Simpson at the bar, and Homer drops the idea that it would cost at least $100 million for them to buy that power plant. They counted their money and realized that after buying it, they would still have enough to get the Cleveland Browns. So they were intrigued.
I feel like that's just a Cleveland joke.
Of course,
Cleveland
yeah.
is just a joke. I mean, I love you, Cleveland.
So I also, one other thing, we kind of jumped around there, but at the point when we realized Homer screwed the pooch and sold all of his stock right before it blew up, Bart literally kicks him in the ass and is like, hey, everybody, that really made me feel better. Basically suggesting everybody kicks his father's ass, literally. Really thought that was a funny visual gag.
Which I like because in the next episode, there's another instance where Homer gets kicked in the ass very similarly.
The next morning at work, everyone at the plant starts showing up in very fancy, expensive cars with personalized license plates that say things like buy low, sell high, hit it big, things like that. Everyone except for Homer, that is. He's the only one there that this sell did not pay off huge for, it would seem. I really like when Lenny specifically even says, or maybe it was Carl, now I can't remember. It was Carl because Lenny got the surgery. Carl says that, wow, finally something is paying off to all of us workers. And Homer just has to hang his head because he missed the boat. Lenny shows up having gotten some, was it Botox that he got or something just to make his smile outrageous.
Now he's always happy.
Right after that, though, they find out that the plant's being sold and a lot of them are going to be losing their jobs. And so while Lenny has that big dopey smile on, he actually in a miserable voice says, this is the worst day of my life.
What I want to know is, when they do the whole thing where they put up the German flag at the power plant, is that actually something you'd be able to do if like a foreign company came into American soil and took over the company? Would they be able to put the German flag up without keeping the American flag up as well?
Probably not. And honestly, I don't really know the laws on flag flying. I feel like since we're a free country, you should be able to fly whatever flag you want.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if all your workers are American, you wouldn't want to do that, would you?
But once again, to jump in, I think that's part of the point. That's part of the joke. That is a little bit untoward. That's a little bit too far.
Yeah. It's just I like to take things in realistic context to see like how far could you push this in actual life.
Before we ever got to the Germans taking over, we actually had a scene with the Germans meeting with Mr. Burns, where at first Burns is like, I'm just going in to tell these guys to fuck off. But then they put $100 million in cash on the table in front of him, and he literally woo-hoos. And then he sits down and says, like, I begrudgingly accept your offer. Burns assures his employees that even though the Germans are taking over, Hans and Fritz are just like John and Frank. All of the plant employees start coming up with reasons why they can't be fired, and once again, Homer isn't able to come up with anything.
I like that he forgets that he's the safety inspector.
Yeah.
He goes, suck it to him, and then, oh, don't! When he finally remembers.
Yeah, actually, someone leans over and is like, isn't that you, Homer? Don't! The Germans introduce themselves to the employees, and I like that the guy they send actually introduces himself. He says, I was sent because I'm the least threatening looking of our bunch, and some say that I remind people of a character from the show Hogan's Heroes. Now, I did not catch the name of that character, and truth be told, I did not watch Hogan's Heroes.
Uncle Fritz was the name of the character.
Did you watch the show?
Hogan's Heroes, yes, I've watched it. And honestly, it is offensive.
Really?
Yeah.
Offensive to German people? Or offensive to who?
Well, I would hope everyone.
Well, I mean, explain. Well, again, I've never seen the show, so tell us your perspective of this.
Well, let me just clear the plate real quick. The Nazis were an abysmal, terrible, offensive, oppressive group. And in some ways, like, to turn that into a farce seems kind of offensive to me. Because the way that Hogan's Heroes works is you have a group of Americans that are held prisoner by the Germans and the Nazis, and the Nazis and the Germans are basically dopes. And the Americans just sort of outwit them every time. And I don't know. Like, I mean, there's a way in which I think that is humorous in The Simpsons, in that the guy that they introduce is a representation of a farce.
Okay. Let me ask you this just so I can kind of see what side of this coin, if we're similar or not. Inglourious Bastards, what's your opinion on that movie?
Oh, it's great.
Okay, so I was like, if you were going to say that was offensive, I was just going to have to be like,
no. That's great. Like the real thing, my real point is, like, I just think it's difficult to swallow when you have a serious, offensive, dangerous, murderous group of people that are portrayed as just innocent, bumbling buffoons.
They're like the putties on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Right.
The difference is the time frame and the way they're being portrayed, I guess you could say. Where in Hogan's Heroes, like, they mean it seriously when they're making it like that. Like, it's more direct, whereas something like The Simpsons or Inglourious Bastards, it's kind of like a wink-wink to the audience because it's years later and everyone knows history, especially in that regards. So it's a little bit different in the styling. Right. So I guess I can see where you're coming from. I never watched Hogan's Heroes. I don't ever have a desire to, but I guess I can see the line of thought you have.
It's, you know, if you ever just feel like it, it's kind of funny at times. I mean, like, it's not the worst thing on earth. It's just, again, you know, portraying a group of powerful, murderous people as buffoons, just, like, I think that's dangerous.
I could see that argument. Like, I'm with Richie on that. I don't really have an opinion on that just because I'm ignorant, haven't seen it. But I can totally see where your argument is forming from, at least. My favorite joke in this entire episode is the next scene when Fritz, while doing the kind of like, these are going to be the changes, talking to the employees meeting, he asks the group, are there any alcoholics? And about half the room raises their hand, but not Homer. Fritz immediately lets them know that they're going to be going to Hawaii for 6 months where they're going to have rehabilitation. Weeks. And when they get back, oh, that's not as good, but not as good. I heard 6 months, but 6 weeks still. That's still dope as hell. So they're going to be there for 6 weeks doing rehab. And when they get back, they will all have their jobs waiting for them. And Homer, who could have raised his hand because he very clearly would qualify, doesn't. And instead, he just sits there and grumbles, lucky drunks.
Well, to be fair, if my job asked that, it's like, have you ever had a beer in your life? Everyone at work knows I have beer all the time, but I would have been like, no, sir, I have not.
Yes, but the second they told you they're sending you to Hawaii for 6 weeks, you would have been like, yes, I was too drunk to have realized you were asking a question, but I am totally an alcoholic. I will also see you in Hawaii.
So who is it that says, Ich bin ein Springfielder?
I have no idea. What does that mean?
I think it was one of the Germans when he takes over the plant. I mean, it's a clear... I have it in my notes here. It's a JFK reference. I mean, Ich bin ein Berliner. I was hoping we could sort of unpack this a little bit because Ich bin ein Berliner is a joke in and of itself. It's Ich bin Berliner. The ein makes it sound like he's saying I'm a jelly donut.
So he's literally saying I'm a jelly donut?
Well, Ich bin a Berliner is like a jelly donut. And so he's saying you don't need the article. And if you're German, if you speak German, you know what JFK was saying. But there was a faux pas. He did mess up.
If he said that today with social media, it would be the top story forever, and he would be lit apart or ripped apart for saying something like that.
Exactly. But so I didn't know if there was what is a Springfielder? Because I know that's the hometown of the Simpsons. I just didn't know if there was another layer to that joke. Although Homer does really like donuts.
Yeah, so that could be the other layer on it right there.
There you go.
Homer goes to Lisa to learn more about Germany, and Lisa teaches him that they are one of the most powerful nations in the world. Homer asks, are they rich because we give them money? And Lisa laughs and is like, no, Dad, they're a punctual, efficient, and hardworking people. That kind of ties into the next scene when Marge and Homer are talking, and Homer's upset because he says that his job is his identity. If he's not a safety whatchamajigger, then he's nothing.
Everyone knows that's clearly false because he's going to have 80,000 other jobs throughout the series of The Simpsons, so...
Well, fucking just the next episode, we see him have 4. He can't sleep, so Marge suggests he tries to do something productive. So he decides to put a Battlestar Galactica puzzle together.
Which means it's the old Battlestar Galactica, not the new one.
The next day at work, the Germans are trying to politely ask for a moment of Homer's time, and Homer keeps saying no, and I love this because the German keeps politely being like, oh, I must have misspoken. Let me rephrase, and then would ask politely in a different way, and this went on 2 or 3 times before they were like, we kindly request your present for the exchange of some ideas, and Homer runs away screaming, ah!
This might be the smartest moment of Homer so far because he knew it was about to happen, and it's exactly what does happen.
Yes, it is. They have already mentioned that the safety of this plant they bought is alarmingly bad. They knew they were going to have a frank discussion with the safety inspector.
With the Super Nintendo Chalmers?
That is, in fact, Homer Simpson. Homer starts getting asked things like, Homer, you've been safety supervisor for the last 2 years. What projects and ideas have you started in those times? All of them? Okay, well then you must have plans for the future, don't you? I absolutely do. Or you bet I do, I think is what he says. This I also really like. Great gag, because they just literally do almost... It wasn't, long enough. It was the appropriate amount of time to have, a real, long delivery joke. It wasn't, Family Guy style, where the fucking thing would cut away to, a Conway Twitty video for, 30 minutes and then come back. This was probably, 7 to 10 painful seconds where the Germans just kind of sat there staring at him, twiddling their thumbs until they finally had to be like, well, can you share some of them with us?
I wouldn't even put that in the same frame as the Family Guy jokes. That was just the uncomfortable silence as they're eyeballing Homer. And if that lasts for 1 or 2 seconds, then it's not funny. And if it lasts for 25 seconds, a la Family Guy, then it runs its course way too fast as well in the opposite direction. So I think it's just a normal little feel the tension in the rooms.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to start a hate fight with anybody about Family Guy or whatnot. I have no problem with people who enjoy Family Guy. I get quite a few tweets of people being like, why can't we just like both? And I'm like, we can. I just, that's just in response. If you ask me which I like better or which I think is the more intelligent show, I'm going Simpsons all the way every time. So that's just my opinion, man.
That sounded very Bart-esque. That's my opinion, man.
Well, next we get to another one of the best scenes in this episode. I think we would all agree. Richie already talked about it a little bit earlier. We get a dream sequence that gives us probably the most accurate depiction of Germany that has ever existed in a cartoon. Would you not agree with that, Carl?
Are you talking about the land of chocolate?
I am talking about the land of chocolate, sir.
Who isn't talking about the land of chocolate?
I don't know why we're not on the way right now.
I know, right?
Well, I'm diabetic, so that's my excuse. What's yours?
It's half price, Richie. You can afford to die twice.
That's the best part of the joke, in my opinion. We all know Homer runs around eating random pieces of the town and random bunny rabbit townspeople, and then makes his joke, "Wow, all chocolate, half price," when he's literally been eating for free.
This is another instance of The Simpsons did it. Patton Oswalt was doing a stand-up, and he's talking about he was in a town, and there are these like big pink pipes that were going up over the highway, and he says to the taxi driver, "Oh, is that where they pump all the strudel into people's houses?" and the taxi driver says, "No, this is where they take the water from the bay and they pump it in and they use it for coolings. It is very, very effective."
He lost the humor entirely.
Well, this is where The Simpsons did it, I think, is that Patton Oswalt, like, he says that, like, because he's doing that a couple times, and then he realizes that the guy just knows he's going for, like, Nazi jokes, and it's just like, ha ha ha, very funny. I understand where you are going with this. This is not as amusing as you think. So,
Which, did you not picture a Nazi saying that?
well, I mean, like, it's just like, I mean, that's where The Simpsons did it, though, is like this land of chocolate where Homer, like, I mean, it's funny. It's funny because it's so unrealistic.
Yeah. And to be fair and historically accurate, the Germans were never once funny until they invented Funny Bot, so.
The punchline to this whole land of chocolate bit is great, too, because Homer wakes up, he's woken up, rather, by the Germans, and he's like, yeah, what, we were talking about chocolate, right? And they're like, that was 10 minutes ago! Everyone else in the plant other than Homer is having a great time with the new changes. They all are saying things like, the Germans aren't so bad, yeah, they've made their mistakes, but that's why pencils have erasers. Homer thinks he nails that little meeting he just had and isn't really worried until there's an announcement that comes on.
It says, "We regret to announce the following layoffs," which I will read in alphabetical order. Simpson, Homer. That is all. Or if Carl wants to do it in a German accent, he can.
"We regret to announce the following layoffs in alphabetical order. Homer, Simpson. That is all."
You should be a bad guy in a movie.
So Homer's lost his job, and it's immediately having an effect on the family. Snowball 2, to be specific, because we see Bart opening a can of carrot cat food, which consists of 88% ash and 12% carrots, and causes it to be one sad cat. Marge also is trying to save money. She let Lisa do her hair. It didn't turn out so great. It split into two halves and is just kind of all over the place. But Marge is telling the kids that they all have to make these sacrifices. Lisa has done things like made a new bar of soap out of the smaller pieces of old soap and tied her broken jump rope together to save money, whereas Bart didn't pay for the comics he read at the comic book store and didn't take a bath today and could even not take a bath tomorrow. Marge is very pleased with Lisa and, of course, disappointed in the way Bart tries to save money.
Which he's thinking outside the box.
Yeah, he's just making it a win-win. It's all good. Burns is now living the life of a retired man, a man who has sold his power plant and is living off of his riches. He's playing bocce-ball with some of the other elderly folks in town, except they all make fun of him for being weak and not being able to throw the ball far enough. He kicks them all off their property.
I own this park. Get
out! He then goes to a sparring match he set up with a giant boxer that he's clearly paid to let him punch. And finally we see him making honey with bees that he's named, and he just gets really awkward with the way that he's like overlording them and like talking about how they're slaving away for him. And another joke that I really love, when Smithers comes to give him a visit, he points to some of them and tells them their names. And he's like, and you see that queen right there? I named her Smithers.
Like, see, and this is only season 3, and they're already firing the underlying theme of Smithers being gay, like, so subtly, but, like, it's so not subtly at the same time.
Yeah, it's very heavy-handed, but it's never direct.
Some of those scenes as well also have sort of a underlying meaning as well. Like, what was it, 88% ash in the cat food? And, you know, like sort of like some of these things are very typical if you watch post-World War II films in Germany. They're very much like dealing with this sense of one person having an enormous amount of wealth and other people just having nothing. There is sort of an underlying issue of the Holocaust. There is that sort of reference. It is very light, but it is there. In the same way that some of the other references, in instance with Smithers being gay, that's already sort of being that same level. And I mean, that's where The Simpsons to me is just an absolutely amazing show, that they can actually reach some of these nuances.
What I enjoyed about the Smithers Bee scene, outside of him being named after the Queen Bee being named after him, is I want to bring this up because you know that I go for things that don't line up with the way characters are over all the years, as long as I know it. There is that one episode of The Simpsons where it's like the 22 or 23 short films about Springfield.
I love that episode.
Burns and Smithers are riding a bike, and Smithers cannot move because a bee lands on his glasses, and he says that he's allergic to bee stings. In this instance, in today's episode, he said he's been stung numerous times, and it's not affecting him at all.
Maybe it's a multiverse like Rick and Morty.
Maybe it's just sloppy writing in the future.
Sloppy, I guess, is technically accurate, but when you get to the point where you've got that many episodes, I imagine it's really, really hard to remember what everybody's stuff is.
Well, the 23 short films of Springfield isn't that far in the future. That's got to be like somewhere between seasons 5 and 8?
That's true. It's not that far down. But it is under a new head writer.
If we're talking about sloppy writing, there's a way in which I think The Simpsons get away with certain things. There's a scene where right after Burns is endorsing his giant check, it cuts to Smithers.
Now that's a big check.
It is a big check. Smithers is reading a book. It's called Sycophantic German. Sycophants, I don't know if you know that word, but that's like someone who only tries to please someone else. They're like a yes man. And so, and this is actually a German joke. What he says, like he's listening to a tape, I think, actually, or whether he's reading a book or not. But like what he says is fake German. It's not real. And so I think there's a way in which I think you can get away. Like I don't know if it's sloppy writing, but you can get away with
Smithers'
things.
character is about him kissing ass, and if Burns is no longer the boss, he has to learn to kiss ass to the new bosses. And I think it's just more of like he doesn't.
Yes, and there's an extra. You're absolutely right, but the next layer is he can't even really speak German.
Yeah, exactly. But the fact is, he's going to try really hard so that he can keep kissing ass. I think it's just a natural thing, like when you first start learning a language and you're terrible at it, like Mayor Quimby earlier with the whole JFK metaphor. Like I think it's just part of the humor. But it's also something you have to know before you see it, or else it's going to go right over your head. Which gets back to what we talk about every week, which is the charm of The Simpsons.
Right.
And then The Simpsons always manage to bring it back with the just easier jokes that make everyone laugh, from kids to adults can appreciate, regardless of your intellectual level. And that's when you get Bart prank calling Moe, asking if "Oh Problem" is available. Be "Oh Problem." Nope. Asking if "Oh Problem" is... This is not a prank call I should ever try to do, because I cannot say it correctly.
Hold on, I'm going to hang up and call you right back. This is going to be great. This is going to be great.
Bart asks Moe if "Oh Problem" is available. First name B. Moe turns around and asks, "Do I have a B.O. problem here?" Gets a good chuckle. Then we get an angry side of Moe when he gives a very dark death threat to Bart. And right after that, Marge is actually sent to Moe's to fetch his father. I love when Bart walks in. Immediately, Moe is like, "I know that voice. You're little Bart Simpson. I haven't seen you since you were a little guy."
Which again plays off the whole thing, because clearly I mean, I know voices sound somewhat different on the phones, but that's just always been a great moment. Probably one of my favorites of this episode, actually, because you just expect all hell to rain down on Bart after all the threats Moe's made over the years.
I like that it's really hammered in when Moe's like, well, what have you been up to? I bet you get in all sorts of trouble, don't you? And he's like, well, I do make some prank calls.
He's got that shitty little grin on his face when he says it.
So here's the real question. Does Moe actually know?
That's a big debatable topic. There's been actually like articles written about it where like Moe is so depressed and lonely that it's like almost a cry for help. And that's kind of why he lets it go on for so long.
And he probably arguably did that type of thing himself as a kid, so in a lot of ways he'd find it endearing that like the little guy was just being a little scamp, as he might say.
And honestly, like, that death threat seems like it's a little bit less dark if Moe actually knows what's going on.
Yeah, then it's just hyperbole at that point.
Right. He's pranking Bart.
God knows I say all sorts of shit that if people took seriously, I'd be in tons of trouble for. So, like, yeah, I'm totally with you on that would be an interesting side to see it from, that Moe would never consider actually hurting Bart. He knows damn well that it's him making the calls, and inside a little part of him, while they might be frustrating at times, a little part of him just kind of smiles inside when he knows what's up.
Have you seen Moe smile before?
I don't know why I got such a kick out of Bart having to do his little teddy bear song on the bar. He agreed that he'd do anything for Moe. Teddy bears having a picnic, I think it was. But right at that time, Burns rolls up on this blue-collar establishment that he was excited to check out.
Ah, the mirthless laugh of the damned. Hold your nose, Smithers. We're going in.
He goes in, he orders a beer for him and his quote-unquote buddy, Homer Simpson. And Homer wakes up from his kind of drunken depression, I guess, and realizes it's Burns and is like, buddy, friend, you're not my friend. Get away from me. Nobody loves you. Basically just letting it all lash out. He basically blames Mr. Burns for being fired, even though realistically it wasn't his fault, let's be honest. Homer's kind of a fuck up, but at the same time, if Burns had never sold his plant and gotten another $100 million, as Homer put it, Homer would still have his job.
And that's, again, we joked about sloppy writing earlier, but this again brings back the great part of the writing staff of The Simpsons, where we get this yin and yang sense where, like, it is partially Burns' fault and Homer's fault for what happens in this episode. So, of course, because of their actions earlier, it leads to the actions that are currently happening, which will actually put the little puzzle piece back together and give us the reset that we always talk about at the end of the episode.
And also, the most important thing about this scene is what it makes Mr. Burns realize, that he has tons of money, but what good is it if it does not inspire fear in his fellow man?
His need for power and terror, which is always his biggest desire. He's always got money, even when he loses some, but he wants the power, and more importantly, he wants the terror in everyone else's eyes.
So Burns decides to march right into the Germans' office and beg for them to sell him back the power plant. The Germans mess up, though. They say, oh, how convenient. You are desperate to buy, and we are desperate to sell. And immediately, Burns snaps into his vicious business mode and is like, oh, you're desperate to sell, are you? Well, that changes things. Here is my offer. He gives them half of what they paid and refuses to go up any. That's his final offer, as he puts it. I really like the line when the Germans basically have no choice. They've realized that this place is a money pit. If they're actually going to make it safe like they plan, like Burns won't, it would cost more money than they actually paid for the building, at least. But the Germans warn, they are not all smiles and sunshine. And then Mr. Burns just mocks them.
Oh no, the Germans are coming after me.
Please stop that.
Oh no, they're coming to get me.
Please.
Oh, look, the Germans are going to attack me.
Please do not mock our culture.
You know what I loved about this whole episode in general is, even back in the early 90s, I mean, we talked about this a little bit. When you think of the Germany and their culture and you think about their history, Karl's referenced it numerous times. People tend to go the Nazi route on it. But overall, when you think of a German, you usually think of somebody who's really angry and mean. And the irony in this episode is that the Germans never really did anything mean or anything that a normal businessman wouldn't do. Like, Homer is the first person to get fired in any situation because he's that terrible of an employee. But they were nice to everybody. They actually were nice to Burns, saying like, oh, you're looking to buy, we're looking to sell. Like, they never did anything overbearing or mean except for hanging the German flag and taking the American one down. That I can't stand for. But still,
but
that's a whole other debate.
This is again where I think the Simpsons are absolutely brilliant, because they basically stand Godwin's law on its head. Like, you keep on waiting for something to go really, really wrong where the Germans are coming. And it never happens. And I mean, like, honestly, if you look at our culture American culture right now, and you compare it to, like, you know, German culture, I mean, we've got a president that seems like a lot of people want to refer to as if he's Hitler. I don't think he's Hitler, but, you know, I mean, people want to refer to him as this. Whereas, you know, Germany has a female prime minister. Like, it's ironic in some ways that Godwin's law exists at the same time that it should be stood on its head. But The Simpsons did it in 91.
Yep. That's very well put.
Burns is back in charge. He immediately has his office, which was turned into a daycare, restored back to his office. He cancels all repairs, despite the fact that a floor literally just collapsed right before they resold it back to Burns. And finally, and most importantly, to get back to our reset that we often mention, he wants to rehire that man that harassed him or sassed him, something of that nature in that bar, Moe's specifically, talking about Homer. Burns explains to Smithers that he always keeps his friends close, but his enemies closer. Then he gets really dark when he talks about hiring him back and keeping him in his cushy job, but never letting him know that he's got the sword of Damocles hanging above his head, waiting to drop when he least expects it. Once again, showing how just dark and terrible Mr. Burns is, which is juxtaposed against the Germans, our expectations versus what they actually are in this episode.
But also shows another smart line for Burns. I think Burns has some of the greatest lines in the show, going back and reviewing them at least. He has so many awesome lines.
What's interesting about that line, too, is the sword of Damocles is short form of basically peril to all those that are in power. And that, I think, sort of, in some ways, makes Burns seem like he's not all that bad. And I feel like I'm defending the devil, but like, he's not all that bad in the sense that if you're in power, there's always people that are going to be coming for you.
Very true. I think it's important to note that Homer responds with his phone call, getting the alert. He says excitedly, "I got my job back! Woohoo!" And the episode fades away, getting everything back to where it originally was. Homer at the job, underneath Burns' thumb, more or less, in a dead-end position that he doesn't really care about as long as it pays the bills, and keeps beer in his fridge and clothes on his kids' backs, etc. Carl, is there anything else about this episode that you want to talk about?
Have we talked about the number of fantasies that Homer Simpson has had? Because there's multiple fantasies that Homer keeps on slipping. There's one with Bart initially, then there's one with Homer, then I got that backwards. There's one with Homer, then there's one with Bart. Then he gets
right.
This
Bart came
beer.
with the money. I think they both actually came with the money. Homer imagined things like, I think it was getting a shave, getting a oil change or a wax in his car,
right?
Something like a car. It was a car wash and a wax. And I can't remember what the third thing was.
But then there was also like the fantasy where Homer is in the land of chocolate.
And Bart's, where he thinks about the cool things you could do with $5,200, and it was things like buy a monster truck or Skywrite eat my shorts to his friends or teachers or whoever.
And I sort of wonder, they really take advantage of that, and I sort of wonder if they're not trying to suggest that this whole thing is just a fantasy.
Like the entirety of The Simpsons?
The entirety of The Simpsons. It's all just... Because it is. Like, in some ways, it's very...
It's totally normal for people to be alive for 30 years and never age a day. Just so
Yeah, this gets into some stuff where, I mean, like, I've heard theories such as it's like a dream sequence the entire time, or I guess to your point, it's all a fantasy. So I think that there's room in the world for that argument, but I don't think that's how it was ever intended.
Okay.
But who knows how it's all going to end.
That's right. Richie, is there anything you or that book want to point out about the episode Burns Verkaufen Der Kraftwerk?
Well, the book that Miles is referring to is The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family. They do point out that Homer runs his telephone cord through a sandwich. So that must have been towards the beginning. I didn't even catch that.
I never caught that either.
Just reading that they actually backed up my thing I said earlier about Smithers being allergic to bee stings in the future, and it's 22 short films about Springfield where that happens. So thank you, book, for getting my back on that. And also, the logo for Burns Worldwide features a family holding hands around a mushroom cloud. So yeah.
Nice.
Let me bring this up real quick. It's right after Bart talks about the comics and not having a bath. Homer is sticking a fork in a toaster.
Because they're making fun of the fact that he was under pressure for being the safety inspector, and I think he was even commenting right then that he doesn't do anything wrong, and he's a safety inspector, and like they were basically, it was a joke within a joke right there, where he was commenting how he was a safety inspector, but he was jamming a metal fork into a toaster that was on.
Doing one of the most obviously unsafe things you could possibly do. Yeah, right on. Well, I don't have anything to add for this episode, but I do want to take a moment and thank Karl very much for joining us today, man. Had a lot of fun chatting with you. I hope you enjoyed the subject matter. I know The Simpsons isn't your biggest jam, but I think everybody loves The Simpsons to some extent.
Oh, how can you not love The Simpsons? It's a fantastic show.
Absolutely. So I know you already mentioned your book, but go ahead and plug that again if you want to, and tell us anything else you got going on right now.
So if you go again to Barnes & Noble, you can, or even if you go to Amazon, it's Best New Poets 2016, Karl Zuehlke, page 44. Other than that, I'm just pretty much, I sit around and think about literature and about films, and that's about it.
Living the dream. Thank you so much for being here. We had a great time. The WizKid and I will be right back for the episode I Married Marge. But first, let's hear from our Podern family.
Auf Wiedersehen, Karl.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Testing. Can anyone hear me? My name is Toby, and I'm the host of the Secret Transmission Podcast. We are a show that discusses the paranormal, conspiracies, the supernatural, UFOs, cryptozoology, and anything else weird. Our show is transmitted to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter for updates at Secret Transpod. So get ready to put on your tinfoil hats and come learn with us as we try to explain the unexplainable.
So let's talk about I Married Marge, which debuted on December 26, 1991, and I want to point out is the last episode we'll be reviewing here from 1991.
Woohoo!
Right? The chalkboard gag on this one is, I will not torment the emotionally frail.
I think that's in reference to Millhouse.
True. Everything's coming up, Millhouse. I just got that shirt for Valentine's Day. I was super stoked. PopThreads.com. We start with an opening of Marge and Homer using a Barnacle Bill's pregnancy test. Marge was really wanting to get a name brand, but Homer couldn't resist the free corncob pipe that came with the Barnacle Bill's brand. There was a C-word rhyme about if the water's blue, you'll have a baby. If you get it back purple, then there's no baby for you. Unfortunately, their results come back pink, right in between, so they have to go and see a doctor anyway. Homer says to Marge, you really think you could be pregnant? And Marge lets him know that she's having the same nausea and craving for pancake mix that she had with her other pregnancies. Homer admits he's also having the same tightness in his chest and the profuse sweating that he had during Marge's pregnancy as well.
Hey, at least they got this down by now. After 3 kids, you think you know the signs, right?
They know the routine, right? Lisa's concerned because they all see Marge go off to the hospital, and Marge is like, everything's fine, your mom just broke her leg.
It's Homer. Your mother just broke her leg.
Bart smells a bun in the oven, and the kids get excited as they realize their mom might be pregnant.
And then I believe that's when Bart and Lisa start asking about the first baby they had, isn't it?
At first they're just really excited, and Homer's like, yeah, it's all fun and games for you. For me, it's diapers and midnight feedings. Lisa says, doesn't mom do all that stuff? And Homer replies, yeah, but I have to hear about it all.
And that's just the worst.
But yeah, they then flash back to tell the tale of the first time Marge got pregnant. It goes all the way back to 1980, and Homer is working at a Funland, a mini golf course. I like that he's actually operating the windmill. He's literally sitting inside the windmill, turning a crank, and doing it too fast. He gets in trouble, is told to slow down because no one's having fun. After he gets it right, though, he said, if you keep working hard, you could make it all the way up to the guy who gives out the putters, which really piques Homer's interest.
He's going places. I believe they referenced that Homer is 24 at this time.
Yes, I think that is correct. At this point, Homer realizes the kids have already stopped listening and gone outside. He yells at them. Bart responds that he thought the story was over. You had a problem turning a handle, but you overcame it. Lisa just replies that they can't be mad at their generation for having short attention spans because they watch a ridiculous amount of television.
I love that line because that's in reference to like yours and my generation. And I would think the millennials are totally so much worse though. Like millennials have even shorter attention spans with everything at the tip of their fingers.
Well, that's because we used to have to sit around watching mostly shit we didn't care about just so, like, one episode of Pete and Pete would come on, or Rocko's Modern Life, and then there'd be a trail of stuff that we weren't that interested in, or, you know, you were casually interested in, but you couldn't just, like, put on your favorite show and watch the entire thing back in the day. That was non-existent.
Well, we still didn't have cell phones either.
I know, it's like back in our day, man, we sound like old crotchety bastards right now. This is a flashback episode. We are going back to only 5 years before we were born.
Let's be honest, one of the two of us not been crotchety.
Good point. Homer decides that he'll just tell the story to Maggie, who seemingly couldn't get away, but we all know that's not true if she really wanted to. She was fine sitting with her dad.
You know, the joke I enjoyed is one coming up where Bart's referencing how Homer took everything in stride when he finds out that Marge is pregnant with Bart initially. And Homer says, actually, Bart, I threw up more than your mother.
Yeah, it's something that you want to hear about your, you know, what the stress you cause your parents, I guess. Well, we go back to the flashback, and Marge is talking about how sensitive and sweet Homer is. And just at that time, Homer pulls up in the driveway, honks twice, and says, Marge, get your butt out here.
This is when Marge is rooming with Patty and Selma, so she's talking to Patty and Selma.
Aren't they all living with their mom at that point, too?
I thought she said I was living with my sisters at the time, but I did wonder that because it was a 2-story house, and Mrs. Bouvier
the mom's always there in every scene.
Yeah, but she actually said, like, I was living with my sisters, so I was a little confused on that, actually.
Well, maybe the sisters have the mom living with them all the time. That would make sense to me.
But one of them has an apartment eventually by themselves, I think.
That could be.
But this is in the past, though. I don't know. Maybe they go...
Yeah, this is a flashback.
Maybe they go in debt or something.
They all live with their mom still. Yeah, who knows? Oh, well. Marge brings up to Homer thinking about the future, and she mentions that his job can't possibly be that fulfilling. Homer says, but it gives him time to think. And when Marge asks him what he thinks about, his first response is, girls. He realizes his mistake, so then he says, boys.
I mean, boys!
Oh! And then he's like, I mean you. And Marge is like, oh, I think about you too, Homer.
This is all while they're standing in line for a famous movie. This is 1980. They are standing in line to go see The Empire Strikes Back. And this is one of those scenes that ever since I was a child, I remember this joke. And it's not a spoken joke. It's the situation and something stupid that Homer does. And it's always stuck with me throughout my entire life because it was such a big deal. If you don't know this is a spoiler alert for The Empire Strikes Back, so cover your ears for about 15 seconds.
If there's anybody who hasn't seen Empire Strikes Back and listens to a podcast, I'd be shocked.
That's why I try to sound sarcastic about it. But we all know that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. Well, in this instance, Homer and Marge walk out of seeing the movie, and there's a whole line of people waiting to go in, and Homer goes, wow, can you believe that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father? And everyone just goes like, oh, come on! And I have remembered
Things are ruining the movie for me, jackass.
My entire life.
Yeah. And honestly, dude, that would piss me off so much. Yeah, that's something that stuck with me too, man. That would piss me off so
like it's
much.
Such a dick move. It's such a dick move.
Such a good joke. It really, and it's just, once again, Homer, it's in a way a selfish Homer moment, because it's not like he's out to get these people. It's not like he was doing it to be rude, but he's just so self-involved that he didn't even notice or care that there's like a horde of people dying to see this movie for the first time.
Yeah.
There's also, though, another really sweet moment, and I've actually seen this as a meme that I may or may not have sent to my wife in the past, but Homer says to Marge, "You're as pretty as Princess Leia and as smart as Yoda," which is a really nerdy way to say something very sweet.
Good job, Homer.
Speaking of sweet, Homer and Marge actually sing together, and again, this is just kind of adorable to watch. Like, neither of them have good singing voices. Homer doesn't even always know the words, but there's still something oddly romantic about these two sharing this moment.
But I believe in that after that they get done singing that, Marge says, our song, which this is not their song. Their song is Why Do Birds Suddenly Appear? Right? Like, am I wrong?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that.
And the first flashback episode we ever saw, which I know you have a complaint about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. So IMDb only has one piece of trivia for this episode, and it's not even correct. IMDb claims that this is the first ever flashback episode of The Simpsons, but we know that happened in season 2 with The Way We Was.
Where you hear when birds suddenly appear.
Every time you are near, Richie.
Just like you.
Did things just get awkward?
Yes, they did do.
At the end of the singing scene, Homer says, "Aw, I bet the guy who she was singing about was really happy." Marge points out that she was actually singing about God, and I love Homer's response, "Oh, well, he's always happy."
No.
Oh, wait, no, he's always mad. Great line.
Yeah.
Next, we see Homer and Marge in their very own castle. Unfortunately, it's the castle at the mini golf course, and they are awkwardly hunched inside, drinking their champagne as the golf balls zoom by on their little ramps that they go through the castle on. Homer uses a word that I did not think that he would know. He says, when talking about doing it in the castle, after Marge says that he looks sexy, she doesn't know if it's the champagne talking or not, but Homer's looking mighty sexy. Homer replies, "It must be the champagne."
You're supposed to roll with that, Homer. Come on now.
But Homer says, "Don't worry, this castle is impregnable," which, again, I would not have thought that would have been a word Homer would have in his vocabulary. But immediately when he says that, somebody hits the, like, special hole that wins you a prize, and it makes the lights on the castle go
There
crazy.
were fireworks while they were doing it, in other words.
Aww. The next day, Barney and Homer were sitting at their bachelor pad, hooting and hollering over some girly show that they were watching where the chicks were as naked as legally possible on television. Homer gets a call from Marge and finds out that they need to go visit the doctor, where they do in fact find out that Marge is pregnant. Dr. Hibbert, with his giant afro and much skinnier form, gives them a pamphlet entitled "So You Ruined Your Life."
I like that you can see a guy in another room that's in a full body cast, and you see him just go, "Poor guy."
Oh, poor guy. Abe Simpson has a scene with Homer where he says he better be planning on marrying that girl. Homer says why, because that's the honorable thing to do, and Abe just laughs and says, "Hell no, it's because you're never going to do any better. The fish landed in your boat. Hit it in the head with your oar."
God. Good advice from Grandpa, though. I mean,
hey, you're not going to land a downer chick than Marge, let's be real. Homer plans out a proposal. In fact, he writes it out on a card and drives Marge up to the point where they are able to park and have a romantic moment together. Unfortunately, however, Homer misplaced the card where he wrote everything down on. While he's hunched over the back seat trying to find it, Marge locates it and asks, "Is this what you're looking for, Homer?" Homer's like, "Read part of it and tell me what it says." So Marge reads this very, very sweet proposal. After she's finished reading all of it, Homer replies, "Yeah, that's the one. Hand it over."
And this is when the proposal happens in the most non-romantic way possible.
"She's going to marry me! In your face, everyone else!" I don't know why that cracks me up so much.
You know what cracked me up? And this is a little subtlety here. She's like, "Are you proposing to me?" Or Homer asks her to marry him. She goes, "Well, I haven't said no to you lately."
Oh, yeah.
Like
That's true.
That's a pretty sexy little joke there, Marge.
That is.
And then I love
She didn't say no when Homer asked her to join the Castle Club.
That's what I mean. Like, I think that's what that was in reference to.
No, that's exactly what it was in reference to.
That's a little dirty, naughty joke there. I was like, ooh, look at that.
Simpsons likes to get naughty.
Immediately after that, Marge goes, "This is the happiest moment of my life," and this is while Homer's butt is still hanging over the seat, and you can see his crack like right next to her face. So that whole little exchange right there, I thought was quite funny.
Well, it's a good thing that she's into that look, because Homer, as we know, shows the crack quite often throughout the series of 30 years now. Or
Once you go crack, you just stay whack.
I guess so. So we go back to modern day, where Bart and Lisa are arguing about what they would name the new baby. Lisa wants to name it Ariel if it's a girl, and Bart wants to name it Cool Mo D, which I just instinctively wrote with a K when I took that down on my notes. I'm not sure if that's accurate. That was never on screen, but in my mind, Cool Mo D is spelled with a K. Homer laughs and says that him and their mother were having the same discussion just 10 years ago when they were going through a list of names and talking about why they couldn't have them because they were rhyming with essentially other dirty words. But when they got to Bart, they couldn't think of a single problem with that one. Couldn't rhyme with anything that could be made fun of.
That always gets me. Every time I literally hit my head in my hands every time I hear that when Homer's like, oh, I don't see anything wrong with that.
It's great. Next, they go ring shopping. Homer finds a ring he wants to get for Marge, but when he's asked how he'll be paying for it, he just says, I don't know.
Which, to throw it out there again, you know, both Mr. Most Days Off and myself worked at a jewelry store. You worked at multiple jewelry stores. And the ring Homer is looking at probably is going to cost more than he'll ever make in his entire life, for the most part.
That might be a little extreme, but it's not going to be cheap. It's definitely more than 2 months' salary for sure.
Yeah.
So they're off to Shotgun Pete's wedding chapel, where the 10th wedding is free, Richie. That's a good deal.
I actually have something to bring up here in the scene when they're actually in the chapel waiting for their turn. Did you pay attention to the couple that was getting married before them?
Only loosely.
The gentleman's name was Cletus, and it was clear that he was supposed to be a redneck guy, and I don't remember Cletus the slack-jawed yokel's wife/sister's name, but the name of the person the Cletus in this episode was marrying sounded similar to hers, if I believe. However, the Cletus in this episode was like a redneck trucker guy, and I was wondering, was this their first attempt at like Cletus the slack-jawed yokel, and they just wanted to have a random character, but then they liked the name so much in the future they actually established him as like a lanky, skinny dude with terrible lips and terrible voicing.
Cletus is one of my favorite side characters. I wish I had more input on this, but that's very interesting. I completely missed that the person getting married was named Cletus.
The woman clearly looked
was lost on me.
The woman clearly looked white trash, and he clearly looked redneck. So I was like, I bet this is the first iteration of Cletus the slack-jawed yokel. It's completely outrageous and different from the way he actually ends up being. But the wife to me kind of was like, I think that's actually supposed to be him.
Well, the Shotgun Wedding Chapel gets their business done quick because they're married in less than like 5 minutes. They have one of those shots where they kind of like show the clock and then it's supposed to be like a really long amount of time has passed, but really it was only like 2 minutes had passed, maybe 3, and they were already at the part where they kiss the bride.
I wanted to point out that my book, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, pointed this out. The wedding cost $20, but you could see the sign behind the receptionist before they entered. The photos are $50. And if you see, they actually got a photo because there's a photo of Homer and Marge kissing with the reverend, so to speak, in the background.
Yeah, he's shouting next.
Yeah. And that means they paid the $50 for the photo.
And they got a shitty photo. That sucks. It also sucks that their first night as man and wife were spent on their sisters and or mothers, not quite sure, but Marge's family's living room. Homer was on the couch and Marge was hunched up in a chair. Which, this is out, like, we're, obviously you and I aren't married, but we did used to sleep in a living room like this together for a long time. Back in one of the first apartments we lived in together, We weren't actually on the lease. We were just crashing at our friend's place and helping out with the bills here and there. And you and I think we had one blanket between us and the Papazon. And I remember you and I used to flip a coin for who would get the Papazon, which was
so
the primary
comfy.
concern.
The couch was dirty.
It was the best thing, but whoever got the Papazon didn't get the blanket. So you were comfortable but cold, or you were uncomfortable but warm. And I don't know why we didn't just buy a second fucking blanket.
I feel like we had to have brought a blanket eventually. That's just common sense.
I know we went for weeks, though, like that, and it was just the worst. But fuck if that chair wasn't comfortable.
Hell yeah, it was.
Anyway, Homer realizes this is not going to fly. They're not college roommates. They are, in fact, a married couple. He also realizes that he's going to need to get a better job, and he's going to go and he's going to apply at the nuclear power plant.
I think I had sex in that Papazon.
I did too. Oh God, I hope I went first.
I was just sitting here thinking, and I was like, I don't remember, but I think that happened.
It was super awkward. That actually, it was not built great for, frankly. But
I just remember it sliding like out of position a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
all right. Well, that's a fun confession. Homer decides he needs to apply at the nuclear power plant, where, unfortunately, there's only 2 spots available for 3 people. And both of the other 2 people were fraternity brothers with none other than Mr. Smithers. And not only that, they were also just way more qualified than Homer was, because when Homer would get questions such as, what is your biggest weakness, the first 2 said things like, I'm a workaholic, or I push myself too much. Homer says things along the lines of, it takes me a really long time to get tasks done, and after I've been here for a while, little things just seem to go missing.
I like what Marge said when she found out he was going to apply at the nuclear power plant. She said, I heard radiation can make you sterile.
Oh, now you tell me.
Yeah. Which, obviously, it doesn't, because they're having possibly their 4th child here in this episode.
Exactly. Another quick little joke. They have a scene with Marge at Dr. Hibbert's office, and Dr. Hibbert's looking at the sonogram saying, if I didn't know any better, I'd swear he's trying to moon us, referring to Bart Simpson.
In the womb still.
In the womb, exactly. Oh, and sorry, we're jumping all over here, but back at the interview, too, one of the other questions was, how would you deal with a problem with the reactor? And Homer literally screams and runs out of the office in a panic. When asked about how it went earlier, he said he didn't get the job because they wanted somebody good. Story of his life.
Very true, Homer. Very true. Sad but true.
Homer made a vow to his unborn child that when he came out, he was going to see someone with a good job. And Patty and Selma replied, yeah, the doctor.
That was a harsh line, but that's one of my favorite Patty and Selma lines, though. Like, I never like their lines just because they're so
mean, dude.
So mean,
I mean, they're
Homer
funny sometimes, but they're so mean.
Yeah, but it's like going back and rewatching them. I'm trying to watch it with like a fresher look. I'm trying to beat my own biases out of my head about certain characters, and it's still hard.
Trying to beat yourself is what you're saying?
I don't have to try very hard for that. But with Patty and Selma, it's so hard to get that idea out of your head that they're just a couple of bitches, man. Bitches be crazy.
Bitches be crazy. That is the overlying undertone of this entire podcast, if you guys weren't aware, just so everyone is now in the know. When you're listening to us, if you're sensing undertones of bitches be crazy, they're intentional. I just want that to be clear.
And we're the bitches.
You're the bitches. This is when we get a montage. You gotta have a montage.
Gonna be a montage. Montage! Always fade out in a montage.
Homer is looking for a new job. He tries to be a candle maker.
Ye old candle maker.
He tries to sell knives. He tries to be
an attack dog receiver.
He tries to be an attack dog trainer, kind of like Turtle in Entourage. That made me laugh. And he even gets in, not a pyramid scheme, mind you. They're not one of those. They got in a trapezoid scheme. Until they heard sirens and the guy giving the trapezoid scheme presentation yelled, "Cops!" and ran out the window.
something I noticed in that scene, when it first shows the business scam scene with the trapezoid, it shows the guy talking and it shows the backs of all the people listening. There was a tall thing of blue hair in the audience. It looked almost as tall as Marge's, but for the time frame being 1980 or whatever it was, it's about the right height for where her hair was at that time. And then when it pans around, she's not there anywhere. So, I referenced this once in the first season, I think, where it looked like Lisa was in the audience from behind at a certain point, and then we knew from earlier in the episode that she was nowhere near there. So I wonder if they just randomly have audience fillers for times where they're at the school watching something go on at the school, and maybe they put that foreground into the picture, but then kind of fade it so that they can show what's actually going on in front. I don't know how they do this, but I clearly thought I saw Marge's hair in the audience.
I completely missed that as well, man. I'm just off on a lot of these visual things that you caught today that I just didn't even see. Back at Marge's home, they are getting letter after letter of things like final notice, 90 days, and we break thumbs. Then a knock at the door comes, and it's none other than the repo men, and they take all of the baby stuff they had purchased, and possibly even worse, Marge's wedding ring. This breaks Homer's heart, and you can see there's a huge emotional impact on this whole situation. I think in a lot of ways, it hurts Homer emotionally more than it hurts Marge. It upsets Marge, but I think Homer is actually more affected by it. And to that, he writes a letter claiming that he loves Marge, but he needs to leave her because he's being a burden on her. He's not helping her. He's not being a man.
I think the Patty and Selma stuff plays on this too, by the way. You talk about how emotionally it's affecting Homer. That's one of the other reasons I don't we're supposed to not like Patty and Selma, because they're making all these jokes to Homer and he shrugs them off for the most part. But from a personal standpoint, when someone talks like that to you all the time and you hear this from everybody around you, that you're not providing, Marge doesn't care. She doesn't care about that part. She just wants Homer. But with everyone else putting all that pressure on him, even though they're just joking, that's going to break you down eventually.
Yeah, I think it all adds up for sure. You don't know exactly what the straw that breaks the camel's back is, but in this case, I think that while the Repo Man is definitely bigger than a straw, it definitely was it wasn't the first thing. It was a lot of things that built up to this moment. But Homer leaves, and he tells her he's going to send her all of the money that he makes, but she will not see him again until he is a man.
I wanted to pull this real quick, because we were just talking a second ago about the pyramid scheme thing. And I know that you and I have talked about it in the past, but for the listeners out there in listening land, I've been to a pyramid scheme meeting. I forgot if you've been to a pyramid scheme meeting before.
Never to a meeting, but I've had many a people try to pitch them at me. I've never gone to the actual meeting. I
went when I was 18 or 19, and I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is they're too good to be true, and they target young people. I just happen to be educated on it, luckily, at a young age. I think I saw my parents get caught in one, when I was old enough to see how dumb it was afterwards. So when I got to college the first day, and sure enough, I was getting pitched by somebody that I had played basketball with in high school, and they're out there trying to get me to sign up on, aggressively, running a sales pitch, trying to get me to sign up to sell whatever the fuck they're selling. And I just instantly was I'm good. But that wasn't the last time either. I've had many friends that have gotten caught up in those things, and unfortunately, I mean, I say friends loosely because they're really more so not associates, but acquaintances. Yeah, acquaintances. Yeah. Just because people I knew, and then we know each other enough to be familiar, and they use that as an opportunity to try to get ahead with their pyramid scheme. And I don't think that they're out to get people. I think that they just have bought into this idea and don't realize that everything eventually collapses.
I've had somebody I went to high school with, and within the last few years, try to get me to go to one of those meetings, and I laughed at them, and I was like, no, I'm good. But it happened to me, and it wasn't a friend that talked me into it. I think it was after I quit in our H2O, the friendly neighborhood water park that both yourself and myself worked at the same time before we knew each other.
I remember.
I needed a job, and I was at a local community college, and there's a dude outside the bookstore talking to people about it, and he said it was really legit, and I had been trying to get a job, and I hadn't found one I liked yet, so one night I said, fuck it, and I had the address. It was all the way out in Dallas, which is a bit of a drive for me. I went out there, I went up to that meeting, and there was probably about 20 of us kids in there with this guy that didn't look like he was much older than us, telling us how we can make all this great money and blah, 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 blah. And you just got to put a little bit of money into it, and you do have to pay. And he goes, okay, we're going to take a break. If anyone doesn't feel like this is for you, now's the time to get up and go. And about half of us raised our hand, because the whole time I was like, you're not explaining anything. You're just saying how we talk to other people and that we talk to you. And I don't understand like what we're actually talking about.
Was there like entire presentation, step 1, underwear, step 3, profits?
Yes, exactly. And it was like, and this is before I knew the term pyramid scheme, but it was the way they described it was exactly like a pyramid, that they were at the top and that he had people under him and that we'd be under them, but we could work our way up. And that he said it was just promotional. Like you just go out and talk about the company. And I'm like, for some reason, these things don't add up to me.
It's not a pyramid scheme. It's just a triangular business model.
There were about 8 of us that raised our hand saying this isn't for us. And he goes, okay, well, the elevator's right behind you. You guys can go. And as we all got up, the dude leading the presentation goes, some people just don't want to make money. And we all looked at each other, all the people that were getting up to leave, just like, what the fuck?
Just snicker, I imagine.
As soon as the elevator door closed, we all started busting out laughing. Like, it was one of those experiences where, like, it was terrible. I shouldn't have ever gone there, but, you know, you got to learn things. I didn't spend any money on it, but that moment in the elevator was one of the funniest.
Hopefully they got you, like, a free Diet Coke or something.
I don't remember. Those bastards, I got to go back and get that.
Right on. Well, Homer, back in real time, makes a comment about how it's hard to believe that he was going to become a responsible head of a household. Just then, Bart peeks around the corner and asks if he can have a can of frosting for lunch. Homer pauses for a moment and shrugs sure.
Hey, he's going to have something to eat at least.
They get back into the flashback, and Marge is upset about the letter she's read, not having Homer anymore. The sisters all are awful again when they say, we're all in shock. We thought he was going to 2-time you before he left you. This is the part where they really do something that just is like, oh, come on, how awful. Because they actually find Homer. They go to eat, and they notice that their tacos they order are full of hair. They look up, and sure enough, Homer, with a full head of hair for now, that's going to last not a long time, as we know, is behind the counter. One of them, I don't know who. I think Selma is like, we should tell Marge, and Patty's like, hell no. Possibly vice versa on that.
Doesn't really matter.
We know twins are really just 2 of the same people. Patty and Selma have in fact discovered that Homer is working at the Gulp and Blow, but they decide not to tell Marge.
Well, and according to my guidebook, the restrooms at the Gulp and Blow are literally, one is named Gulp and the other one's named Blow. Which one do you go into?
Oh, and those are both so
yeah,
dirty.
I know.
That's so great. Well, Marge is miserable, so finally one of the twins breaks down and tells her where to find her husband. She goes to the store. She goes to the drive-thru and she says she needs her husband by her side. Homer asks if she wants fries with that. But they reunite, and Homer had been true to word. He was sending her money this entire time, and he had a renewed spirit at this point when Marge came to him. He realized he needed to be with his wife. And his wife loved him, and that's what, and wanted him to be in her life, regardless of their circumstances. Which, again, Marge is a down-ass bitch, dude.
Yeah.
Props.
What I liked is in that scene, she says, Homer, do you know why I married you? And Homer says, because I knocked you up?
No, because I love you. Well, Homer takes his renewed spirit and he marches to the power plant, marches straight by the security who doesn't even flinch at him walking by, even though the sign specifically says no visitors. And he gets to Burns' office. I love that Burns is playing Pac-Man, and as he gets...
Mrs. Pac-Man.
Yeah, Mrs. Pac-Man. As he gets the dot that, like, puts you on the aggressive against the... that puts you on the offense against the blue ghosts, he has this, like, great point where he's like, the hunted has become the hunter. And it's like, he gets, like, really into Miss Pac-Man.
I told you, man, he always has great lines. It's just you never pay attention as much when you're younger.
Well, Homer, both in a very stern way, tells about how loyal and stomped upon he will be. Burns replies that he loves how feisty yet spineless he is, and he hasn't been this impressed since he interviewed a young Smithers. And he even goes as far as to say as Homer Simpson. I'll remember that name, which we know he never ever does.
I like when Homer walks out and Burns is asking Smither about it, and Smither says, "Sir, he not only failed the aptitude test, he got trapped in a closet on his way out."
Also, when he's on his way out, he is telling Marge all about it, and he's telling her he's going to go tomorrow. I'm going to go and I'm going to buy your ring back, and I'm going to go searching for a house. And Marge is like, "Aren't you starting your new job tomorrow?" And Homer's like, "Someone will cover for me."
What I like when they're in the delivery room with Dr. Hibbert, Homer's doing all this yelling about how he's a man and everything, and he says, "Starting tomorrow, I'm a nuclear technician." And Dr. Hibbert goes, "Good God!"
Yeah.
Didn't you like the moment he had with Patty and Selma, too, where Patty and Selma were talking down to him, and he actually overtakes the conversation and says, "This is my wife, this is my baby, and if you're not going to treat me right, then you can leave," basically.
Absolutely. This was Homer's redemption moment because he had been really stomped on this entire episode. This was a really low episode for Homer almost all the way through, and that everything he was doing, he was actually putting his heart into, but really struggling. I mean, the best job he was able to get was at a drive-thru, essentially, in a place that had a gulp room and a blow room.
Which Patty or Selma had that great line where Marge is like, "Where is he?" And they said, "I've got 2.5 words for you: gulp and blow."
Yeah. Well, after Homer gives this speech where he basically demands respect and really wins over, at least for the moment, Patty and Selma, but more so... Yeah, more so, though, you can see the respect he gains in Marge's eye. And then Marge delivers Bart. He's healthy and has 8 fingers and 8 toes, and that's all you can ask for in the Simpsons universe. We go back to modern day, where Homer is hugging his children and telling them how much he loves them and saying, "Not a day goes by where I do not thank God for all 3 of you." Just then, Marge comes in the door announcing, "Homer, I'm not pregnant." And Homer scoots basically throws all of his children off of his lap to scream, "Woohoo! Excellent, Marge!" And they high-five to close the show out.
It's actually like a very, very sweet moment before Marge came in, and I like the opposing ideals in that, where he's like being so sweet and like, "You're the greatest thing ever," and "Thank God we don't have another one." Like, it was perfect.
Exactly. Which I know many parents who feel that way in real life, and all of them, like, they'll get pregnant again, or some of them, they'll get pregnant again. They're like, "Yeah, we're ready." And it's just like, "But you were just telling me how excited you were not to have something that, like, shits all the time and, like, you can sleep through." But, I guess they're bundles of joy. I really love my nephews.
But you don't want to see them all the time.
No, and I like them a lot more, frankly, and I'll tell them this to their face. I like them a lot more now that they're getting older because they're a lot cooler and they can take more of a bump without crying. I think that's going to do it for I Married Marge. Richie, was there anything that you or that book of yours wanted to mention?
Well, again, in case you don't remember, my book is The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family. I've mentioned a couple notes throughout this episode that the book brings up. One, I didn't say that according to the guide here, it says the Gulp and Blow serves beer according to the drive-thru menu. Which...
I guess it could be like the Eskimo Hut.
It could be like Eskimo Hut, but this was 1980, so I don't know all the rules in Springfield drinking law back in 1980. Besides that, I have a point that I want to bring up. I am confused, and I didn't write this note down. I was just thinking about it as we've been talking about the episode. In the last flashback episode we have, which is The Way We Was, Homer goes over to pick up Marge for the prom at the parents' house. And isn't Marge's father in there, and he's sitting on a recliner asking Homer, and he looks like some kind of big fat, almost like a Fat Tony looking kind of guy?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay, well, first of all, this is only a couple years later. Where's her father? And also, in future seasons, when Marge has a fear of flying, you see a flashback of her father being a flight attendant, and he's like a tall, skinny guy. So, who is Marge's father? I want to throw that out there right now.
Man, you're nailing them today with all the inaccuracies. I mean, I think they're throwing in a lot of jokes in these seasons, but clearly they're not getting high points for keeping the continuity clean.
But we talked about this when we first started the podcast. That we know the earlier seasons are going to have a lot of inaccuracies according to now because things aren't established yet. But like, where was Marge's father in this episode?
Yeah, he was just completely absentee.
Did he die?
Maybe he had gone off to get his pilot's license.
But well, the episode where her dad's a flight attendant, she's really, really young. So I don't know. Like, it's just, there's a lot of questions I have, and I feel like there's a lot of holes that I wish were filled in a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll have to get through some more and see if we can find those answers. It's worse than Lost now that you think about it deeply.
Is Marge's father the Invisible Man?
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Richie, is there anything that you want to plug before we get out of here?
As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I am at @thewiz_kid23. Same for Instagram. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow. We have a page for our show, and it's just at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. So make sure when you're on there, you follow all of us.
Yeah, that Best Darn Diddly will also work on Instagram. You can find me at MrMostDaysOff on Twitter. Other than that, we will see you next week when we'll have special guest Toby from the Secret Transmission podcast to discuss the Simpsons episodes Radio Bart and Lisa the Greek.
And remember, if you want to have children, stay away from that nuclear waste.
We'll see you next week.